Welcome, everybody, to the second podcast on the Drone Money Podcast. That's right. We named it the Drone Money Podcast because we thought that's what we wanted to make content about how to make successful businesses with drones. And you're watching this here live on our Facebook group. And this group is meant to bring everyone together to share real stories about how to actually do drones and drone monies, make a business, and more technical stuff as well. So this group is a place to discuss, ask questions, and learn about drones and the businesses of drones and surveying. So today we have a special guest coming on later, and we're going to be talking about beyond visual line of sight and BVLOS, and what does that mean, and how to do it, and how some people are having success with it here in this 2022 and going into 2023. So today I'm joined again with our lovely co-host, Daniel Wyndham.
Hey, everybody.
What's up, Daniel? How are you doing today?
I'm within your line of sight.
You are. You're right there. I can see you.
Merry
Did
Christmas.
you have that? Did you have that one? You had
No, it's totally spur of the moment.
That was spur of the moment. Okay. That's all. Thinking on his feet.
Never assume that I'm super prepared. I'm just kidding.
I love it. Yeah, that's right. Christmas is right around the corner this weekend. And I think I'm going to be going skiing. What are you doing?
I'm going to try not to turn into an icicle. It's going to be 11 degrees, I think, at my house, which is the coldest maybe I've ever been in my life.
And you're in Georgia.
Yeah. It's not normal for us. I wore shorts to Christmas like 2 years ago.
Wow.
So
yeah,
I'm going to try to be doing that. I did some M300 flying this week, and maybe I'll do some next week. But in between, we'll just be having fun. There's a lot of cool stuff going on. Just drone people trying to get jobs done by the end of the year. We've got that big deadline coming up week after this week, I guess, next weekend. So been talking to a lot of people. How do I do this in time? How do I expedite this? So been a lot of people kind of busy, and then other people are just checked out. So it's a fun balance between the two.
Yeah. Well, hopefully we get to check out here in a second, but that is for later because today we are talking about flying beyond visual line of sight. So Absolutely. Let's kick it off and give people a little introduction about what is this notion of beyond visual line of sight. Why is it a notion? And then what has it hindered us from doing, and what will it allow us to do in the future? I think those are some good bullet points. So I'll kick it off. So beyond visual line of sight is exactly what it sounds like. Basically, currently, as the FAA here in the United States, we have some regulations to fly drones commercially. And one of the rules is that you have to fly within visual line of sight. So you got to be able to see the drone at all times. You always got to be watching
with your eyes.
With your eyes. Unaided. Yeah. We can't have some binoculars. Like, that doesn't count. Glasses, I think, are fine.
Monocles as well.
No, monocles are okay, but no telescope, something like that. So you basically got to keep the drone within your visual line of sight at all times. And this has been there is actually a small caveat, like you can fly behind a structure for a brief second and then come back into sight. And so that by the rules today is fine. But you can't be doing it I feel like you can't be doing willfully. I feel like I don't know. I don't know.
I mean, there's these people that are like, I'm going to go do 6,000 acres. I'm not going to move one time.
I think. Let's get into that in a second. Yeah. So first, that is the rule that you can't fly beyond visual line of sight. So there's waivers that basically waives that provision of the rule. So people are getting a waiver in order to waive this part of the rule in order to fly beyond their visual line of sight. And so, I mean, currently what this means is if you're getting a job and it's a very large area, you need to find a really good vantage point. And this is a good thing anyways, because you really want to be able to see, good transmission with your controller to the drone anyways. And that visual line of sight, you'll always have good transmission, good signal. But it really does hinder the scale and the breadth of drones being used. So I'd say visual line of sight and then flying over people would be my two kind of big things that really have held back the drone industry in general.
And the altitude. I mean,
400 feet. Yeah.
600 feet. That'd be nice.
I think 100 miles per hour is fine.
Why not? You could probably do that if you really wanted to, but you'd have to be really high. Yeah.
So I think, basically the rule is 400 feet and under, under 100 miles per hour, I believe. And then 55 pounds within visual line of sight.
Right.
So this has been, a big hindrance of drone delivery services, Now, so in other countries, so we have people like Zipline, and so Zipline's delivering medicines in Africa. I don't know exactly where, but they've been doing that for several years. Now, here's the interesting thing, Daniel. So actually, I've been flying beyond visual line of sight for years.
I'll say you've done it. Yeah.
Yeah. I mean, I flew, my largest map I flew was 800 square kilometers in Mexico. And I was flying these vertical takeoff and landing aircraft. And I mean, yeah, it was going about 40 miles from me. Like I didn't see it. It flew for about 4.5 hours, and I would take off and fly it. And then, basically sit back and just kind of drink a couple of Coca-Colas and watch the screen for about 3 hours until it came back to me. But now that being said, the rules and the regulations is something that, we're really interested in talking about today with our guest. Absolutely. And getting a little bit deeper into. And because the rules and regulations in Mexico at the time were few and far between. But I would say in that area, we still used a lot of caution. We communicated with the local air traffic control tower. And so I basically had constant communication with the airspace. And I was able to, clear out quadrants of, the airspace and fly safely. Because I was also flying at about 1,500 feet. So very high.
Yeah. Where you're likely to encounter helicopters, manned aircraft of all kinds.
Yeah. And really, that's really what these rules are for. It's like, how does the drone integrate with the airspace? And so that's kind of why they're keeping us low within visual line of sight, because you need to be able to, because one of the visual line of sight doesn't mean you just see it. It actually, you need to know the direction it's going, so you need to be able to make maneuverable control of that drone.
Like you can avoid stuff. That's the whole idea.
The whole idea. So helicopters coming, which has happened.
That's happened to me.
Happened to me. Yeah, I've definitely had helicopters come zooming over, and I had to, take over manual control and lower the aircraft really quick. So that certainly is a thing. Yeah. Daniel, what do you think? So with beyond visual line of sight and with the rules, how have you seen it? I guess my question would be to you, because I'm curious your thoughts, because I know my thoughts are, but there was a lot of hype around drones back 2015, 2014. Like this was the hypeiest hype thing in the world, right?
Yeah. And delivery drones,
turn urban air mobility, actually flying people,
right?
Power line inspection, going down the power lines and all this stuff. But then it never really quite happened the way they predicted. And I think it's like, I mean, obviously it's all because of the regulatory hurdles. We just couldn't do it. Yeah. What do you think about that?
Well, I mean, you get to a point where you have a balance, right? You have regulatory hurdles over here, and then you have what you can do, your technology. And so does it really weigh out? And one thing we have to think about when you were talking about, the maneuverability of the drone, I was thinking about, I was flying near a natural gas pipeline, actually pretty close here to my house. And they have an airplane that flies this pipeline. I think it's like once a week. It probably takes all week to cover the whole state. I actually met somebody who was the wife of the guy who flew the plane, weirdly enough. I think she cut my hair. Small world it is. But, they have legacy systems in place that work now. So you have to overcome the fact that they're successful now. It's just more expensive, takes longer, it's harder to do. But that inertia is harder to get started if you've already got somebody doing this job. And so to replace it with a drone, you already have to fill that void. You have to take care of like, okay, how are we going to replace this? And then if you add on top of that, like, oh, well, even if we figure out how to do it, even if we figure out how to replace these man hours, then I still have to get all these permits. And people just don't like to deal with it. Even if it was a one-page form, some places that's where it stops.
Right.
Like if you have to do anything. And so there's a lot of times where it definitely would benefit me. I did a lot of like 500-600 acre sites where, I mean, I just have to move. There's no realistic way that I could stay on one side of the site. And it depends on the topography. If I can have, if you're lucky and there's like I flew a mountain in Tennessee earlier this year, I just got on top of it. I could see it the whole time. I didn't have to move at all. I could fly on 3,000 acres and never had to move. But if you're doing more regular life stuff, land development, construction, there's always stuff going on. Even if it's natural stuff. I mean, you could have in an urban area, you can't see past buildings. If me or Robert or, our guest Robert that's coming on later, if we go to downtown Atlanta, I can't hardly see farther than I could see in my own yard just because there's natural obstructions. So, but I feel like I could conduct a safe flight and just be able to do that. But there's a lot of stuff that just gets in the way that it's getting easier to get out of the way.
Yeah. So I think that's what we're going to talk about today is how it's getting easier to make this happen. So, I mean, we are making progress. It is moving forward.
Yeah.
And I think also just talking about what does that open up for us? You know, what possibilities are there once we have beyond visual line of sight and we have a clear path to doing these kind of things? I think that's going to be really exciting for the next 5+ years.
Yeah.
You know,
and in our line of work, you know, you think about how do they navigate this airspace? Well, don't they need a good 3D map? You know, there's a lot of 3D mapping and, you know, whether it's from different sources, but you need to make sure these things aren't hitting things. And you think about the rate of cell towers. I mean, you can throw up 500 cell towers across the country in 1 year. Well, on whose map is the most up to date? You forget a firmware update, then you lose a drone, you know, carrying somebody's medicine. Like there's a lot that goes into that will build into that industry so that they have, you know, always current up-to-date data.
Yeah, absolutely. So I think I like what you're saying there, and I think it brings me to, I think we'll touch it right here and then maybe at the end with Robert. But you know, I think let's give a little hot take of, you know, what we think, you know, the rule could be to actually make it, because I've had a lot of opinions on this over the years, because, you know, whenever what the rules could look like to enable this. And, you know, so politicians, if you're listening, don't listen to me or do listen to me, whatever you'd like to do. But my opinion has always been that, so beyond visual line of sight, the parties that are most vested interest inside of the lobbying efforts in the FAA, you know, you're looking at these big, basically delivery drone systems, right? You got the Walmarts of the world, the Amazons of the world. Yeah. And because there's a lot of money in, you know, logistics, you know, last mile. So they are lobbying heavily, right? But there's a big difference between flying a drone in an urban location over a bunch of people and, you know, a city versus, you know, doing a topographic land survey where you have a bunch of
pine trees
in the middle of pine trees. Yeah, exactly.
Yeah, exactly.
So I always, my wish was that they would, you know, diversify, like make categories of how to do this. And so the category could be like, if you're flying over completely undeveloped land and your drone has a battery life that only lasts, you know, 45 minutes at most, like how far theoretically could it even go? You know, even if it went crazy, it's going to still go to the woods. You know, like I wish there was a category for that with an easy pathway for, you know, people in, you know, construction, engineering, forestry, you know, start practicing this and learning from it. Because, you know, if you're not near any infrastructure or you're, you know, it's just you're in the middle of nowhere, it should be very easy. And it should be a different topic than talking about flying over Levi Stadium or something and, you know, delivering whatever. Like,
I mean, you think about doing oil and gas work. I did that for years, GIS oil and gas. I mean, there's 100 miles of nothing except for oil and gas. Right. And they're all fine with having the drone fly overhead. You know, there's all kinds of distribution lines, which, you know, you think of the ones that might go over the interstate that you see day-to-day life. But most of the time, that wire, you know, that system, they're in the middle of nowhere. There's nothing that's going to, if you're not flying directly over the lines, you got nothing to worry about. Right. If that thing falls out of the sky, you're just going to maybe go in a lake or a tree.
Well, you know, we can wish in one hand and, you know, whatever in the other hand, and we'll see what the FAA does. But the ongoing joke. But, you know, honestly, though, it's moving forward. And that's the important thing that we want to talk about today, that it is moving forward. The possibilities are there, and learning more about those possibilities and how, you know, it is possible for not only the Amazons and Walmarts of the world, but soon we're going to be talking to Robert Wilhite and learning how it's possible for the alliances of the world. So I think it's really exciting. So I'm going to go ahead and we'll bring Robert on in 1 second, but just a quick recap. You guys are all here on the Drone Money live stream podcast. We had other names and we you know, unilaterally chose this one. But next week it might be something different. You know, and that's just kind of how it's going to roll. You know, every week my name is
light. Huh? We're just keeping it light.
Keeping it light.
We got multiple passports. We're Jason Bourne over here.
Jason Bourne. Yeah. So thanks for joining us here on the live stream and joining the Facebook group. Again, the Facebook group is a place where we're trying to create a community to talk about the actual, you know, real world information that you need to know on making money with LiDAR and making money with drones, how to make maps, how to do surveying, and this new technology, and get real world data sets, real examples, and real communications going. conversations. So if you have any questions, the conversation always extends after these live streams on the group. And Daniel's there, I'm there. Yeah, we got a big group of people who are just talking about real world stuff. And in the future, we're going to be doing some actual price breakdowns, actually showing some quotes. So the format that we're looking at doing is basically bringing on experts in the field who are in the field practicing the craft and breaking down some of their experiences, breaking down, a job, breaking down like how they quote that job, how much are they charging for that job? How much should you be charging for that job? I think these are really important information that nobody likes talking about. And maybe we'll never get a guest again because nobody likes talking about it. But you know what?
We'll be here. We'll be here. Yeah, we'll interview each other. How about that?
That sounds good to me.
I just wrote a demo proposal this morning. Hopefully we can use later. So if there's any guest watching right now that has a proposal that they're trying to write, they're trying to bid, trying to quote, make sure you write to us. We'd love to have you on, and we'll live stream it. Let's quote it out. Let's bid it here, right live. Yeah, let's do it live.
Let's talk about it. I think it's really important because last thing we want to have happen is people, out there getting, doing $100 to do a big job because some third-party organization is.
Don't charge by the hour, guys.
Yeah.
Oh my goodness. Yeah.
All right.
That's crazy.
So with that being said, let's welcome our guest today, Robert Wilhite. Robert, welcome to the channel, the chat. How you doing today?
Trying to stay warm and dry. Other than that, I'm doing great.
I think you're located not too far from Daniel now, right?
Yeah, I'm just east of downtown Atlanta. So just a little bit north of where Daniel is.
Awesome.
We're close enough where we're going to watch what we say to each other.
Now, I've known Robert for about it's almost 2 years, a year and a half now, and we've had a great friendship growing over the past year and a half. Robert is director of sUAS over at Alliance, and so he's been flying drones. And honestly, your history of coming into the drone craft into what you're doing now with more engineering work, I always found really exciting and interesting because you told me the story. Maybe you can share this with the group here because I thought it was really interesting. So maybe you'd like to share a little bit about yourself and how you got into drones and what you're doing today. I think everyone would love to hear that. And then we can get into BVLOS.
BV what?
Yeah, exactly.
Oh, how I got into drones. At the time, I was flipping houses. And the only thing I was different than what I was doing, than what you see these husband and wife and teams on HGTV, was I didn't have a film crew. I did everything. And I as a photographer, really off and on for the last 40 years in various aspects. 2015 was about the time that consumer drones really started to catch everybody's attention. Mm-hmm. And at least for me, it was like, that's a camera on a flying object. That'll be a different perspective. Mm-hmm. So doing real estate photography, it's like, okay, well, that's a no-brainer. So my first drone was a Phantom 4. And proceeded to crash it on the first job.
Well, you got it out of the way, at least.
There you go. That's what great insurance is for,
Yeah.
And about 6 months after that, the real estate market was changing dramatically in Metro Atlanta. Mm-hmm. And I kind of saw the writing on the wall from a flipping standpoint. It's like, you know what, drones, I'm kind of thinking that's going to be like when the internet first showed up. So I pretty much burned all my bridges in a nice way. Generally, you hear that used in a negative connotation. But for me, I burned my bridges of everything I was doing and said, okay, I'm going to dive in 100% with drones. And the interesting part that you had alluded to was I, as a photographer, I've been a creative all my life. So I kind of gravitated toward the film and entertainment industry because that's all about creativity. Mm-hmm. And I was very, very fortunate to be hired on I guess it's a reality series And the cool thing that I'll tell people, I don't give this advice, but that's how I did it. And I was very fortunate. I got a signed contract before I even bought my first drone.
That's awesome. That's the way to do it.
I got the job before, and that's the commitment I made to my bride. It's like, I've got to drop 30 grand to 40 grand right out of the gate. So I'll wait till I get the contract. And I did. So fast forward 7 years, worked on films, documentaries, music videos, and the first documentary, very interesting fact, our production team won an Emmy. So
really,
what? We got an Emmy on a shelf. And
no, you get out of here, really?
Yes,
we have Emmy winner on the show. Second episode. I just want to get that down.
And I think we're going to top that because we just started a documentary filming that is probably going to be a 2 to 3 year project. It will be national news. I'm going to tell you that ahead of time. You're going to hear it on every news outlet about what this documentary is about. Wish I could tell you more, but for us to win an Emmy for the documentary that we did shoot, this is going to be a hands down Emmy winner, no brainer.
That sounds awesome. Well, we're definitely gonna have you back on the show to talk about that when we can talk about that. And so,
Oscar nominee Robert Wilhite.
You had mentioned about the industrial side. So how I shifted from 7 years of film and entertainment to the industrial side was I was flying construction aerial progress on the side. And the owner of the company of one of the projects that I was doing called me up out of the blue and said, "Hey, we want to start an in-house drone division. Can you start tomorrow?" And I'm like, whoa. Let's talk about this a little bit more. So fast forward almost 2 years later, I've been on the industrial side and loving it.
Yeah, the industrial side, it's interesting. It's like the story is very common. What you're saying is people get into almost like real estate videography and then videography and then wind up doing some work for construction or land surveying or civil engineering projects. And maybe that story is like we're unique, like we're going to be the last generation to have that story, because I feel like the only reason that happened is because the people adopted the technology first was in videography and photography, but now the technology has been being adopted by all of these civil engineering, utilities, municipalities.
Standard kit.
Yeah, so maybe we're a part of the back in my day when I started. I had to fly videography to start doing drones. It might be us.
Can you believe we had to see the drone the whole time?
Well, and back almost 8 years ago, just having a solid foundation of just camera settings and framing. I mean, that's a nuance and a niche in itself. And not everybody that had a drone or even has a drone really understands what it really takes to pull that off.
Right. No, exactly. It's a lot of learning, a lot of knowledge. So tell us today. So today, what's your day-to-day look like today at Alliance, and what kind of work do you do, and what systems are you flying? What are you doing?
What you really want me to describe what I'm doing today?
yeah. What's happening today?
In general.
Are you in a truck right now?
Yes, I am. I'm in a company vehicle. I had a dental appointment that ran late, and I'm sitting on E on the gas. So I ran out, figured, okay, I'm going to go to a hotel lobby. I did that. It was too loud. I'm running out of gas, so I pull in the gas station and I fill up, and it's like, okay, I got to connect. So here I'm in a gas station in the company truck doing a podcast. So that's how we roll.
That's awesome. That's like you're working though, so you're out in the company truck, and I guess it's raining, so you're not flying today. But
well, you got to fill that timesheet, Robert. You got to get something on them. You got to fill that timesheet up. This is marketing.
Yeah. So what do I do on a day-to-day basis? I did develop an in-house drone division. So all the processes and procedures, I had to come up with that. And that's not really recreating the wheel as much as people might think, because if you have a really good checklist and a pre-flight checklist and a post-flight checklist, I mean, that's really the foundation. Everything that is in addition to that is more from a management standpoint. Hopefully people are maintaining their drones per manufacturer recommendations. We go way above and beyond that. We look at our drones and put hands on every month. In addition to a full manufacturer breakdown once a year. So from a typical week for us is our bread and butter is aerial LiDAR. We do photogrammetry as well, but 98% of the time, I would say that we're flying the ROCK R2A LiDAR payload.
Are you flying that much?
Oh, yeah. Yeah.
Wow.
We fly pretty much every week. If the weather was not the way that it is right now, I would have 4 projects to fly this week. And, we're taking off all of next week. So I've got 2 more the first week of January. So you would think this time of year it would kind of slow down, but dude, we're rocking and rolling.
Yeah.
That's awesome. What kind of jobs are you flying then? What are these jobs? What do they look like?
It's a mixture of residential and commercial, heavy on the residential. But we still do a decent amount of commercial. So from the even both sectors, really, what we have found and have gravitated towards gravitated into is initially we were flying LiDAR for the original topo and for the engineers to be able to engineer the site and figure out how much dirt's going to be had to taken off or brought back in, or how the site's going to be engineered, what's going to be placed where.
Right.
And that quickly morphed into not only an original topo flight, but once the site was initially developed, we would go back in and fly aerial LiDAR for as-built.
Yep.
So now it's almost a default that we're flying a project at least twice.
Yeah, because the marginal cost of getting out there again just isn't. You own the equipment and you're out there flying, and the data is useful. So you should do the as built. And I guess what kind of you guys are getting more information about exactly the geometries of what's out there as you're building it. That's sweet.
Yeah, and from the builder side, before they come out of the ground, they want just assurances that everything is graded correctly before they start to pour concrete, because after that, it gets really costly.
Yep, sure does.
So the great thing is just finding different valuable ways of the data that you originally capture, or even into a second flight, because there's a lot of use cases, and we really haven't even opened up Pandora's box yet. We're starting.
That's awesome.
This is the year you open the box.
Daniel, you have a lot of experience doing this as well, because you're.
Oh yeah, I flew tons of as-builts with it. Yeah.
Yeah, you're also in that Atlanta area doing very similar work.
Yeah, I fly 3 or 4 a day some days. I mean, it's just crazy.
Yeah,
you can do so much with it, Robert. I mean, so I know this number in my head of what it would be for me, but how many people do you think you'd have to hire to replace the drone if they were doing conventional topo? I mean, do you even know? Would it be astronomical? But
the way that I'll answer that question, Daniel, is I always like to give people an example of a field run topo, traditional field run topo, crew versus a drone.
Yes.
And it really blows people's minds. And that is for a field run topo for 100 acres, and let's just say it's perfectly flat. And that field crew is going to be able to cover anywhere between 3 to 5 acres a day. So let's just say 4.
Yeah.
Well, you're talking about a solid month of them being in the field, and then they've got to take all that data back, and it's going to take a week, sometimes 2 weeks to process.
CAD drafter. Yeah.
So the flip side in throwing a drone up in the air with like the ROCK R2A, I can fly that 100 acres in an hour and 20 minutes. I can process the initial point cloud before I even leave the site to check my data, get into the office. And once that data is uploaded to the point cloud, the ROCK point cloud, and then we process it for contours, it's in our client's hands within 72 hours.
That's awesome. That's a big difference.
Yeah, you can't compete with that.
Right. You can't compete with that. And I assume so. These residential jobs, I'm going to parlay this into the BVLOS conversation. So it sounds like what you're doing is, you're getting these 100 acres, even larger development sites. And now, you wish to be able to just fly that entire development. And that's kind of led you down this journey of looking into BVLOS, and then now successfully, attaining these some of these waivers, and well on your way to marching down the field to getting waivers to be able to do this, anywhere. So I think this sounds really exciting. So am I right on that? That's kind of like, that's been the impetus of going down this road, was being able to fly these larger job sites or these undeveloped areas without visual line of sight. Is that correct?
Actually, I approached this and was motivated in a completely different approach. And as soon as I came on with Alliance and really got my feet wet very quickly in the actual flights, and the environments of what they were flying, the hurdles, and Daniel will be able to become a bobblehead on this when I say the challenges of flying a project, whether it be natural, and that being trees, to if you're in a more urban area, buildings. I think you guys kind of touched on this in your opening, that trying to keep that drone within visual line of sight of all times is a constant challenge. And the amount of additional time in the field that it takes to adhere to that, I just saw that as an uphill battle. And I'm thinking about our drone division and scaling that. It's like, okay, how can we make this easier? So for me, it was just a process flow, and honestly staying legal. I'm a stickler for that. There's a lot of drone police that are that you see on Facebook, and sometimes I'll chime in. And the reason why I'm really kind of staunch on that is, if we don't protect our industry, who is?
Yeah, no, totally.
If we don't stand up and say, hey guys, that's not right, you're putting our industry and our jobs at risk, then it's going to be the wild, wild west. So I was more motivated from a legal standpoint and flying legally, to making sure that we were doing things and functioning and operating correctly according to Part 107. So that was honestly the foundation of my motivation. And I came to our president. I said, listen, the challenges are an uphill. They're constant. And there is this thing called BVLOS, and they're incredibly difficult to get. They're very long, and the process is long and drawn out. But if we're able to obtain an actual approval for a BVLOS waiver, then in the survey world, in the bubble that we operate in, and this is not just Alliance Engineering and Planning, it's any engineering or surveying firm out there, I guarantee you they're experiencing the same challenges as we are. And some people turn their heads and may fly out of visual line of sight. They're looking at the risks, and well, I'll just do it. We just didn't want to operate like that. So it really wasn't a hard sell, as much as I thought it was going to be, to get approval and make the financial investment to go down that road and actually not only submit for a BVLOS waiver, but to actually gain approval for one.
Can you describe to us sorry, Daniel?
No, that's fine. I was going to say, from a business perspective, that sounds like when you said scaling a program, that's going to put you in a position to differentiate yourself to where you're not afraid of the scale of any project or the scale of, over, the entire United States. Do you have to balk at a project that's 6,000 acres that could change your entire company? Well, no, you don't have to now, right?
No, and I will tell you that we're already having conversations to that level of magnitude.
Yeah.
And I think it's totally, technically it's very feasible. I flew a video that I had to take down, unfortunately, but one single battery set with the R2A on the M300, I went, a little over 7 miles. And
I love that video. I didn't know that wasn't on there.
Yeah, they weren't wearing helmets on the car, and so the PG&E got all puffy.
Goodness. Okay. Well,
but it was, I know. I'll just cut that part out and then keep the video.
Yeah, there you go.
It was 7 miles on a single battery set. We were on, side by sides chasing it. So we're in sparsely populated areas. You're able to fly from a moving vehicle. But this at 7 miles, and then I've flown, almost like 2,000 acres in a single day with an M300 in areas where I had visual line of sight. So doing 6,000 acres, 10,000 acres, this is a very attainable thing with the technology that you're already using today. So I can totally, definitely seeing this, getting this waiver is going to be awesome. I'm really excited to, because you'll talk to the aircraft or people that own big King Airs and $1 million LiDAR systems or cameras, and which is great. But they always say, oh, it's like 50 acres you can do with a drone. We'll do everything bigger. They have some sort of limit. Yeah. But I've always, flying drones for so long, I've been like, wow, a lot of these drones, you can fly a lot. And, once the weight limits get changed a little bit. So I put together a VTOL aircraft. This is the same system that I was flying to do the 800 square kilometers. But we put actually a full Regal Bucks, a huge, $750,000 LiDAR system in this thing. And this was in China, back in 2016, I think. And, this Chinese team took that drone and with that LiDAR on it, and they flew I think it was 5,000 kilometers of power lines. Wow. They just knocked it out. And I was just I saw them do this. I was like, this is just, and I come back to the States and it's I can't fly more than right in front of me. Yeah. And just seeing how, the thing that I always feel, this is a hot take for a second, detract the conversation really quick, but the thing that always bothered me a little bit, just in my soul, was that we're letting these other people get all the experience that they need to perfect this art and this skill of this new technology that, like Robert said at the beginning, he felt like this is the next internet, right? And I'm very proud to be where I'm from. And I feel that, I want us to be on that forefront of technology, here in the United States. And I felt like the regulatory landscape just made it very easy for other people to figure out all the fine parts. But hopefully, with what's happening now, we're going to be able to leapfrog and jump back into the front on this beyond visual line of sight kind of work. That's my hot take. Sorry, distracting.
And there's a lot of movement in a very positive way as it relates to BVLOS and the FAA. Obviously, we're not going to be able to see that on a day-to-day basis, but there is a lot going on behind the scenes from the FAA as it relates to BVLOS and trying to scale it to the point to where it'll never get to the point of, I don't believe, to a Lance type experience, but that's kind of like their mindset. They want to streamline this and make it easier and more attainable. So that's their goal, and that's what they're working on.
I like that a lot. Yeah. Can you tell us a little bit about your particular waiver and what that was and what is it and how did you go about getting that?
Yeah. Well, first of all, what I'm not going to assume that everybody watching knows about BVLOS and the specifics of it, but a BVLOS waiver is always tied to a location. And the entities that have obtained a BVLOS waiver up to date generally speaking, you can go to the FAA's website and you can scroll down, and there are a lot of power line companies, energy companies, gas line. So scenarios where people are flying the same mission over and over and over and over again.
Yeah, inspection type work. Yeah.
Yeah.
Same fixed asset.
Yeah.
That environment doesn't work for the survey and engineering world. When we're awarded a project and they decide that they would like aerial LiDAR versus a field run topo, I get that email and I'm expected to fly that or have that flown within a few days and the deliverable in the client's hands 2 or 3 days later. So the whole BVLOS process it's like shoving a square peg in a round hole. The time of the BVLOS waiver, oh, by the way, takes months, and depending on the complexity, could take up to a year to write.
Right.
And so we couldn't go down that road of a BVLOS and keep a project on hold. So what I did was come up with a plan for our company that is a 3-pronged process. And so the first BVLOS request that we were going for was, obviously we had to work within confines of BVLOS, meaning a site. So we just arbitrarily picked a site that we had already flown just to use as a location in order to write the BVLOS waiver and then to submit it. And then hopefully, if we got an approval, which we eventually ended up doing, then we would take that approved SOP that the FAA just approved, and then we would go towards step 2 of a BVLOS. And that's what I've already submitted our second BVLOS request just a couple of weeks ago.
Awesome.
So we fully expect to get approval on that based on what the FAA approved in our first BVLOS waiver.
Right.
And I will tell you that is a non-geo BVLOS request, meaning there's no geographical limitations of where we would be able to conduct a BVLOS mission, except as it relates to controlled airspace. So in other words, all Class G.
Yeah.
Something that you guys kind of touched on that I made a note on before you brought me on was, Harrison, you had mentioned, it'd be great if they just kind of did categories of BVLOS. And even though there's not that type of structure from the FAA side, basically what I would encourage people to do if they want to go down the BVLOS road is take that category type mentality and structure your waiver verbiage to the category. For example, for our second BVLOS waiver that is currently submitted, we've defined a category, if you will, or a scenario of this BVLOS non-geo request, meaning it will not be adjacent to interstates or
I see
a certain level of population. So we've defined our own category within the waiver itself. And
that's interesting. Yeah, 'cause you're defining this category and kind of taking it into your own hands to, as a, applyee, someone who's applying for a waiver. Applicant, sorry.
Yeah. Because think about the first waiver that we were approved for. That was for a specific location. So
is that also a specific drone and specific equipment? What other kind of specifics are in that?
Everything that is involved in the submission process has to be defined. And it has to be detail oriented in a way that even as I go through what we submit, it's mind blowing just how to the level of detail that the processes have been written. So the first one, that was a site specific. It was 28 acres. So the defined category, if you will, was that site and within the airspace of that 28 acres. When you get into a non-geo, you really do have to define your own parameters and your own category, because you can't just apply for a non-geo and just leave everything blanket and say, we want to create a BVLOS mission in a non-geo, and just you've got no goalpost.
So
they'll kick that out in a heartbeat.
Yeah, you keep talking about the application process. What is this process? So you guys, obviously, I think you guys have some help writing up these applications. And so is there an actual form that you fill out, or is it submit whatever? Like, how does that work?
Yes, we actually sought outside professional help and expertise. We partnered with a firm that has probably obtained the vast majority of BVLOS waivers that are currently approved. So in my mind, it's like, why should I go out and recreate the wheel? I can create a partnership with those who have already done it. Then that will dramatically reduce the amount of time it takes to write the waiver and get it submitted.
Right.
Versus me trying to learn it and do it all on my own. Now, there's people out there that have tried that way. Sadly, I haven't personally met anybody that's done it on their own that's actually obtained an approval. So that's
successful at it. Yeah.
That I have to tell you something.
Yeah. Right. It's just when I went through my process, because I got an over 55-pound waiver for some job up in Alaska, and I think it was almost 2 years to get this thing. And yeah, we had to define all of the basically not only like the area where you're flying, but the equipment that you're flying, and all the different fail-safe modes that the equipment has, every piece of the mission planning software. How does mission planning work? What's this called? Operating procedure, basically.
Oh yeah, standard operating procedures.
SOP.
Your SOPs for everything. And then how do the people work? How do we communicate? And like define this whole game basically of like, how does all the pieces move? And even with that, the people on the FAA side, because I met with them several times, and the questions they had were very, they were learning as well. They're just people, and they're just, and if you're coming to them and you have this new drone, it has a new autopilot, has a new safety features, you really can't expect them to know everything.
Yeah.
They're not this omnipotent, being. They're also reviewing what you're giving them. And so to give them all the information they need to make a educated decision, I think was one of the biggest challenges. And that's why the proposal becomes so long, because it really is every single piece of the puzzle that you have to define. And for us, we also worked with, I can't remember what the external firm was at this time. It was a few years ago now. But they wrote everything, and I made all the technical documents for the drone, and then we submitted, we got it, but then we ended up not even flying that drone. By the time we got the waiver to do it, that drone was already obsolete.
There was a new one that was lighter.
Well, we actually flew an M210 instead. Because it was fine, because the LiDAR payload got so small, and we flew the ROCK R1A at the time. This was like pre us even having the company ROCK, really. And but we also flew an Alta X with a Regal on it. And so it was a very interesting event, but it required a lot of specific knowledge around everything, and we did have some outside support to do that. And so it sounds like that's how we were successful, and that's how you were successful as well. And I think that's probably how it's going to be.
And again, the huge advantage was speed to market. So that was the motivation. The other thing about the BVLOS waiver process is, and I just learned this maybe a month ago, that shocked me. Guess how many people in the FAA review BVLOS waivers? Just take a guess.
I'm gonna guess 2.
Is that very
I hope it's not 1.
How about you, Harrison?
Well, I have a little inside knowledge because I met 2 of the people. So
there's 6. There's a total of
6. Wow,
look at that.
Now think about 6 people that are reviewing these intense, detailed documents, which you are very familiar with.
Yeah.
And the fact that the part that blows my mind is our first BVLOS waiver, from the day that I submitted it to the day that I got a response, which happened to be approval, thank you, was 6 weeks. That's it.
Wow.
That's
really?
6 weeks.
6 weeks.
And
okay.
Our non-geo BVLOS submission was 2 weeks ago. So I'm kind of hoping that the end of January, 1st of February is I'll be starting to look for a response.
I think that sounds awesome. I think this attributes to the lack of precedent setting with the first one. So I think if you're if there's another waiver, so there's a website you can actually find all the waivers. And a second ago, Curtis was showing on the screen, I think he found your guys' waiver that was awarded.
Oh, he did? He pulled it?
Yeah, you can see a lot of these. And, if you're not precedent setting, it sounds like the 6 week is actually pretty attainable now, because that's very impressive. Yeah.
Oh, there we go.
That's a lot less than here we go. Certificate of Waiver, Alliance Engineering and Planning LLC. Yep. Look at that. There's a responsible person right there, Robert Wilhite.
Let me tell you, it's a lot of responsibility. It's one thing to get a waiver.
Yeah.
It's another thing to go fly and operate within the waiver confines. Because if you don't, then you're wasting all the time and resources and money to get a piece of paper. And if you don't change the way that you conduct flight operations, then what's the point?
Yeah. Well, what did you change?
And you don't create a differentiator between you and everybody else out there.
Right.
I've literally gone through every BVLOS approval on the FAA site. And my goal was to try to confirm if Alliance was the first survey and engineer firm in the entire United States to receive a BVLOS waiver. And if so, it's freaking huge.
Yeah,
great.
That's the reason why in our press release we put one of the first, because the ones that I could not confirm were the BVLOS waivers under an individual's name.
I see.
And there's no way that I can determine how they were utilizing that BVLOS waiver. All the other companies and entities I was able to confirm. So I still think that we're probably on a short list of maybe 2 or 3 in the country. There might be some other survey or engineer firms that have gotten a BVLOS that may not be using it for how we are using it, which is topography. That might separate us, but another long-term benefit of having a BVLOS waiver and that differentiator is the type of conversations and who we can approach in the industry.
Right.
Talk to the public sector. If you have something like that and no one else does, even in the private
exactly.
So it probably has more value in the public sector.
Right. So it sounds like, so this is a 28-acre waiver that you're awarded already. And now you're going for this kind of blanket waiver. So first of all, I think the community here owes you guys some a debt of gratitude, because you're setting some precedents for us. And, if you're successful, then, you're going to be a path blazer for the rest of us. And when you're successful, not if, when.
There you go.
That's the way to say it. That's the truth. So I definitely think that's really important. And then, so I just wanted one more question. Then let's go over to some questions from the audience. But my one question was, like, is there anything specific or different you had to change about the aircraft? Is there any special technology that you had to equip on the aircraft to get awarded this first waiver? So I don't know, which aircraft is it for? And then is there anything special on it?
That's actually a great question. All of our BVLOS waivers that we will submit and hopefully get approval for all of them are going to be based on the DJI M300.
Okay.
I do know that the vast majority of BVLOS approvals the majority of them are for fixed wing drones.
Right.
So the fact that we've got it on the M300 is a pretty huge step. And
is it just the M300, or is it any like a parachute on there? Anything special on there that you have to equip? Just the M300.
Yep. And
you open the case and this thing is flying.
Yep. And you bring up a great point. You don't have all these different peripherals and add-ons and stuff like that.
I'll be honest, that stuff always made me feel like it made the flight characteristics more dangerous than less dangerous.
Yeah, I mean, there's a lot of success in the parachutes that are out there, but we wanted again to create a scalable environment and to determine if we could get a BVLOS approval with an M300 right out of the case. But what that forced us to do was to write an SOP that had to make up for all of those new peripherals and sensors and stuff like that could make that whole process a lot easier and allow you to fly longer distances.
Right. Transponders or like extra radios. Yeah.
I'll tell you that in our non-geo one that is currently under review, we've requested a 1.5 mile BVLOS distance.
Awesome. That's awesome.
I mean, again, if we get approval, it's going to be huge. And
I like this, you're putting a category at it, so right now you're kind of, I think everyone should be paying attention because the FAA is reading this. So it's really a help me, help you, help me kind of situation where you are defining something that, is, you feel comfortable with. And now the FAA, when they approve this, that's going to define, a rule internally. These 6 people are going to talk about this, I'm sure. Yeah. And now they're going to say, oh, this 1.5 mile radius, the M300, we felt comfortable doing that under these, conditions. Now that's kind of, now we're loosely forming the boundaries of categories, and then eventually we're going to, maybe there'll be an actual official rule there. Everyone can just do this at 1.5 miles with these approved equipment. So I don't know. I think that sounds really exciting.
The main target for the first one was for the FAA to establish or to approve an established SOP. Here's our SOP. And if we can get them to approve that, then that really sets the whole foundation for BVLOS waiver number 2, which is non-geo. It's like, okay, we're taking this approved SOP that you just did, and we're just dropping it into a non-geo environment, but we also have to create some goalposts to work within. So, when people are considering a BVLOS waiver, especially in a non-geo, getting away from a specific location scenario, you really, the question is, how much do you want to try and bite off and hopefully get the FAA to approve? You could be greedy, and we could have been greedy and say, yeah, we really want to try and go for 2 miles.
Right.
But it's, I was relying on the expertise of our partners and the insight that they were giving us in writing the waiver. It really boiled down to, I'm not sure that if we go beyond a certain distance that, they're probably going to kick that back. So it was
Exactly.
more like a gut feeling, if you will.
Yeah, I think there's a lot of good information about what you're providing on these kind of limits of where people are seeing the rules getting applied and waivers getting accepted today. And I think we have so that's really awesome. It's great work on your team and really setting the future for us here. And I think actually we have a lot of questions from the audience. They want to, hear from us, hear from you, and some of their questions. So Curtis, our man behind the scenes here, you have some questions. Awesome. So question, when do you think we'll be able to use 4G LTE connectivity with our drones here in the US to allow for better BVLOS flights?
Oh, that's a great question.
What do you think?
Actually, what the FAA, I think I alluded to the ARC committee. I think it was over 90 different members of the ARC committee. And the ARC committee was put together. The FAA wanted a committee put together of industry leaders. And I wish that we had more representation from you guys and people like me and people that are watching this podcast. People that are flying drones for a living. We did have some great representation, but I wish we just had more seats at the table. But that ARC committee was tasked with coming up with recommendations as it relates to BVLOS. And one of the conversations was this question right here. And initially, the FAA really thought that they were going to have to require some kind of connectivity environment. But with the NPRM that they released on the BVLOS, I think there was over 53,000 comments. And I want to assure everybody who's watching this podcast, if there is ever an NPRM that the FAA releases, notice for notice for proposed rule making. That's basically a government document that is required by law that they have to release of what they're thinking about instituting and changes that they want to make. And that is released to the public for our feedback. And when I tell you that the FAA reads literally every comment, they do, and they categorize every comment. And they did that with those over 53,000 comments on the NPRM from the BVLOS.
Talk about a lot of time reading these comments, guys.
Yeah,
it is. And the reason why I kind of peel that onion back as much as I did was because of the question that was just proposed about connectivity. And because of the overwhelming comments about connectivity as it relates to BVLOS, the FAA pulled that from what that was what on their whiteboard, so to speak, of what they were going to institute. They pulled it off because of our comments. So
awesome.
I'm telling you, our voice has the ability to be heard. So
well, I'd say the areas in which you're most safe to fly BVLOS is
you don't have service.
You don't have service, right? In the middle of nowhere.
Yeah.
So it's kind of an oxymoron where like you need to have service in order to fly beyond visual line of sight, but that's the most dangerous areas we have service. So that's awesome. Let's go to the next question. So we have a question here addressed to you, Robert. Would you be willing to share one of your approved BVLOS application packages with us? I don't know if he's going to be willing to do that, guys.
For the low cost of a lot of money.
Yeah. Pay the man some money. I'm sure he will. But you can see the approval online. Yeah. The approved.
I'll tell you that the process was a financial investment. People would look at the check that we stroke, and it's like, wow, that's a lot of money. But it's what's the end goal? If you get this, if you actually get an approval, what are you going to do with it? How can you monetize it? How can you differentiate yourself? So we've got a financial investment in that waiver application. So putting it up
so no
for all the public to see.
No. Well, that's fine. But you're letting people know that like it is an intense process. It's financially, significant. It's time significant. And for them to want to walk down that road, they need to be prepared. Like you said, what is your end goal? Like, yeah, I'll show you how to walk down this road. You got to walk it yourself, but also you got to know where you're going. So
right.
That's true.
Yeah.
What type of firms might be able to help you with the BVLOS waiver?
And again, that's a great question. I would just encourage people to go to the FAA's website where they list every BVLOS approval and look at those firms and do some of your own due diligence to determine what type of drone that those entities might be using based on their industry. And I've already mentioned this in the onset that the vast majority, I'd love to find out an actual number of BVLOS approvals that are for fixed wing drones. So look at manufacturers of fixed wing drones because there's several guys out there that they've built their drones and they've built specific technology into their drones with a BVLOS mission in mind.
Yeah, this is like Iris Automation. They're one of them.
Iris is Census.
Census. Yep, exactly.
Yeah, huge.
And then now you have, honestly, the EB can fly over people, right? This is a blanket waiver.
Yeah, and it's just a piece of styrofoam with a camera.
Yeah, I think that's the exciting thing. So we're seeing some big, rule makings that are generalized, like the EB flying over people, generalized, boom. It just opens up a whole avenue to do some work. And then, so that's what I'm looking forward to in the new year. I think 2022 is the first year we saw big blanket rule makings for aircraft for specific types of operation. And I feel like the M300 could be in that list. It could get into there with what you're doing. And that would be amazing. If it's just a blanket waiver.
Yeah, the fact that we've done it on an M300 makes it much more realistic and attainable to others that are either in the industrial sector or want to get into it, that you don't have to necessarily have a specialized drone to be able to pull off an approval for a BVLOS waiver. We're living proof that it can be done outside of a fixed wing. Now,
I'd also say the specialized drones, and nothing against anyone, but honestly, M300, it's a workhorse that people use all the time, every day. And one of my always worries when I see these, like some of these drone delivery companies or something like that, they're making their own drone. And when they do that, it just makes me feel like, because the M300 is tested by tens of, probably hundreds of thousands of different users across the globe, flying every day, and they're gathering that data back. It's a very Tesla model, right? Because Elon said, we're going to send all these cars out there. We're going to give them these sensors, these cameras, and we're going to query, this fleet of vehicles in real world applications to turn around and try building our full self-driving. And I personally am a big proponent of that. I'd rather see drones that have been flown hundreds of thousands of hours, see a drone that, has worked for forever. The batteries are great. The ESCs are great. The propellers are great. The motors are great. The avionics are great. The obstacle avoidance, the sensors, the algorithms, all that has been working together for hundreds of thousands of flight hours. Now let's talk about doing BVLOS instead of coming at it and just saying, hey, it's a drone I just built and give me BVLOS. I don't know. That's just my personal opinion. So let's go on the next question, though. How are drone delivery companies planning to deal with BVLOS waivers when there isn't a very well-defined location or route assigned to a drone delivery ahead of time? And it's a good question, and I think this is difficult. This is why we're not seeing this technology really take off, and you see just some example areas where I think, is it in Dallas or Austin, where they were delivering some I think Walmart was delivering
It was
something.
Dallas. Yeah, Dallas.
Was it Dallas?
Yeah.
But that was one flight route, right? That was one route to like one neighborhood. And was it Wing? I think it was Wing who's doing that. Google's company.
And they have Drone Up too.
Yeah.
That's a great question. I will tell you that at least from my knowledge on this, with drone delivery, the parameters of their application had to be pretty defined. Removing of the goalpost, no. The FAA would have kicked that back. They've got defined parameters throughout their application process. Otherwise, the FAA would never have approved it.
Well, I just don't understand why would they get the approval before people that are flying these drones every single day? That's my question. Like, why if I'm the FAA and I'm looking at, here's this company that's done, internal test flights. Okay, cool. Here's someone else that literally there's thousands of these drones flying every single day constantly, and the people are doing business with them. They're actively doing business. Why is that not? And I think it is like what you've shown by getting this waiver, like the M300. They didn't require any additional features on there. So I think coming back to the question, like I think it's going to be difficult for the drone delivery people to get these waivers with. I'm not saying unproven technology, but I'm saying technology that's not in the workforce.
Yeah.
Well, by a large majority of people. And I'm not standing up for DJI or anything, but the fact is those drones are in the workforce today and they're being used constantly. And they are, they have shown over time to be reliable. So I think that's kind of where I come at it from. I'm not taking sides here with anything, but just, if one thing is being used every day, one thing is not being used every day. Okay, well, let's look at that.
Well, there's two things that come to mind on that is think about the companies that are getting into drone delivery and think about where they are financially and what they're capable of doing and the amount of influence that they have over somebody like Alliance Engineering in Atlanta, Georgia. So, the
little man needs to be represented.
Huh?
The little man needs to be represented.
Yeah. So, I mean,
I'm not Walmart.
The loudest, squeakiest wheel kind of gets the most attention, and they're able to get more of attention and have more of an influence just because of they're the 800-pound gorilla in the room, and we're just a little monkey right down the street. But
I would love to take your application and then we can just charge a fee, and then just everyone you can submit thousands of applications. Really, your defensible business here is actually selling award-winning applications. You actually never fly a drone. All you're doing is selling the application that wins, and you just replace location with a new location. And I don't know. I think there might be a business model there.
Harrison, you just stumbled onto environmental permitting like I used to do.
Yeah, right. Award-winning environmental permit, and then
and the other point that I wanted to make on that was you look at the M300. It's an industrial drone. These drones that these companies that are using and wanting to use for package delivery, they're much more robust. And obviously they've got to have a lot of redundancy, but they also come with their own limitations. But I think that you take an M300 versus, let's say, a fixed wing drone that is built around BVLOS from its inception. And you submit these two to the FAA. Which one is going to be easier to go through the process and for them to swallow? It's the drone that was designed and built all around BVLOS. It's easier to get that through their own workflow. And then here you come along with an M300 that is not designed with BVLOS at all. It's all just about an industrial workhorse with all kinds of redundancies. And, we're trying to shove that into a BVLOS environment, which we were able to do, with the individual that wrote our waivers is an absolute genius. I'll tell you that. I never get tired of having conversations with him, and I always learn from him. But it seems like to me, if you've got a piece of equipment that is all geared toward BVLOS and one isn't, you got a more of an uphill battle from the M300s of the world to kind of prove your case.
Yep. Yeah, I totally agree with that. Well, I think we are about 15 minutes after the hour here. And so with that, I would like to thank our guest, Robert, for being on the show with us today and sharing his experience getting a BVLOS waiver and going on to a second non-geo restricted BVLOS waiver, and hopefully well on his road to pioneering a category for us all to be doing land surveying and construction and these kind of monitoring applications for our jobs. I think this is going to be a very exciting, pioneering, future for us that you're doing, and I thank you for taking on that challenge because it is it's more than just you, because everything that you're doing goes into the ears and the eyes of the FAA, and that changes and sways their thinking about how to approve these things. So it is a community effort. So thank you so much for doing that for us and for yourself. But thank you for being on the show as well.
You're welcome. And I'll throw in this last little carrot. We actually have a third BVLOS submission that we're going to do as soon as we get approval on the non-geo. And when we get approval on that one, let me tell you, that's going to be a game changer. And
that's exciting.
I'm chomping at the bit that I can't mention it at this point, but I'm just telling you, the non-geos there's already a non-geo. I think there's at least 2 or 3 non-geo BVLOS approvals. So we won't be the first, but I think we'll definitely be the first in the survey world. But awesome. The third one.
Well, we look forward to hearing about that when it gets awarded.
There you go.
Thanks again for being on the show. Again, everyone, this is the Drone Money podcast. That's what we're calling it this week and maybe next week as well. And join us for our discussion on Tuesday, January the 3rd. We have Bill Cheatham. He's going to join us to discuss how much money earthworks projects can save using LiDAR to create accurate contours, as well as some tips on how to find clients for these types of jobs. I think it's going to be a really exciting conversation and moving us further into our new year, where we're going to keep doing this podcast or live stream, Facebook, whatever we want to call it. And we're going to be bringing in experts from the industry who do this work day in, day out, and have them share their success stories with us and give you an opportunity to ask some questions to them or us. If you'd like to still talk to us, I don't know, we're still here, Daniel and I, but we definitely want to hear from you. And
I'm actually a chatbot. I've not been here the whole time. This is AI.
ChatGPT, Daniel.
ChatGPT starring Daniel Wyndham.
Well, with that being said, Merry Christmas, Happy New Year,
everybody. Happy New Year.
Happy holidays, and we will see you here next time here on the Drone Money Podcast.